Now this book had a difficult task of trying to make me empathise with Lex Luthor, and I'm not exactly rushing to shave off my hair, but... Woof woof! Hey guys, it's me Marcus, aka the Mad Dog, and we're back with another video. Written by Brian Azzarello and illustrated by Lee Bermejo, the first issue of Lex Luthor Man of Steel was published by DC Comics in March of 2005, with the fifth and final issue coming out in September of the same year, and Lex Luthor is ready to take his war against Superman to the next level. With the public fawning at the Man of Steel's every move, Lex steps up his efforts by joining forces with Bruce Wayne, creating a non-profit science spire for Metropolis, and creating his own hero named Hope. But when he's faced against a situation that his money can't save him from, how far is Luthor willing to go to show the true colours of his arch-enemy? Now Lee Bermejo is just something else, and I know that's not really a great description, like, oh thank you Marcus, thanks for narrowing it down to something else. But it should just go without saying, and it's a real shame that he hasn't done a lot more work, but at the same time, because of the quality of what we've got, I can understand why it might take a bit of time. But I would really be interested to see how much further he's developed, because I reviewed Joker last year, which is the reason why I'm probably reviewing this now. But in saying that, I can now see some of the things that aren't as up to scratch, because I did read this when I was quite early on in my comic reading journey. I think I would have been about 15 or so, and I just remember the art being great, but now that I'm looking at it with a fresh pair of eyes, and because of the fact that I have read Joker, I can just see some of those differences where he really has stepped up his level. And I'm not really sure what the scheduling was like. I'm not sure if Bermejo had done quite a few pages before issue 1 was even published, but it did come out month to month, which I do think is great, but I can see that some of the pages aren't really as up to scratch as what I'd expect. That may come across as an unfair negative, especially when you look at the overall quality that he's able to produce, but there were a handful of occasions where I just had to double check that there wasn't some kind of fill-in artist, or that they'd changed the inker or the colorist or anything like that, and the odd page here and there just looked like it was still in the sketch phase. But that is just a minor thing, because everything else is pretty much top tier. Bermejo always reminded me of like a grittier Alex Ross with some influence taken from Eduardo Risso, and just from the opening scene of Metropolis where it takes a full page to just let you soak in this landscape, I knew that this was going to be something great, for the most part. But this could be to a detriment of the story, and in no way am I marking it down because the art is too good in places, but I did really want to see a lot more of Bermejo's Superman. And if anything, I think Bermejo's underused a little bit in this because of how detailed his illustrations can be. Give this guy a full Justice League title, let's see what he could do if you just give him every hero at DC's disposal. And what I liked most in this was the subtle use of elements. I can't really think of a better word than that. So for example, if Lex is watching TV, it's got that classic static on it, and it's also got some kind of glow so that it reflects on the characters. Reflections are also done really well, which is important in a story like this where Luthor's forced to look at himself. And I have a massive soft spot for minor details like that, where you can tell that the person who's illustrating it understands what's happening in the world. And also just have to throw some love to Dave Stewart, who's on the colours, and it always just baffles me that he can be the colorist for Darwin Cook, who's got this completely different style from Lee Bermejo. He's like the Lionel Richie of comics because the guy's got range. The palette that he chose for this was spot on, and I don't think that anybody would have done a better job, and I love just really seeing Superman and Lex Luthor in just the whole of Metropolis in these really muted colours. It changes itself up again when you're in Gotham, because when you're in Metropolis you've got all these golden yellow hues. Even though it's more natural, it's still got this vibrancy to it, and it feels like somewhere that you'd want to live. But then when you go to Gotham, it's usually more browns and greys and just murkier colours so that you feel like you're in a place that you don't want to be. And given the complex nature of Lex and what he's thinking and he's feeling and he's processing throughout this book, I think that the tone is just done well throughout. One last thing I want to bring up about the art, was it just me, or was Mona always pointing ass first at the reader? Like, I'm not complaining, I'm just wondering if anybody else noticed it. Like, I was really getting Jim Lee Batman Hush kind of vibes here. In terms of the story, I much preferred this over Joker, and that's a debate that I'm not really sure where people weigh in on. I'm glad I couldn't remember too much about this story from when I originally read it, and I think I came at it with a different perspective now. This is a book that works much better when you do know a lot more about Superman, Lex Luthor, and the rest of the DC universe. But at the same time, I do think this would be great for a new reader. I think I might have even recommended this in my Where to Start Superman, because in terms of just giving us a short story that gives us a snapshot into the life of one of these supervillains, I learned a lot more about Lex in this than I did about Joker in his book. And there was just a great through line throughout this book with the science spire and Hope and Lex's relationship with it. I loved that dynamic that he'd built her from his his specifications, and he fell in love with her despite the fact that she represented pretty much everything that was in his arch nemesis. Can't lie, if I was Lex, I would have gone for Mona the second that she started flirting with me, but I think that was the point in her character. She is what most guys would have gone for and found desirable, but for Lex, he's looking for more of a power dynamic. And Mona just couldn't bring that to the table for him, despite her looks, her personality, and the fact that her arse just always seems to point at me no matter where I'm looking. And I think that was one of the side plots that I enjoyed most in this book. The relationship between her and Lex, not the fact that her booty was pointing everywhere. I loved that this wasn't an origin story, and yes, when I reviewed Harleen, that was one of the aspects that I liked most, but Lex is a much more fascinating character when he's already rich, when he already hates Superman, and he's just going full steam in his mission. I didn't need to know about the first time that Lex saw Superman and how his hate developed for him. I just like being dropped into the middle and let me fester in your anger. And that's exactly what this book did, and why I really enjoyed it so much, and why honestly I wish it could have been a bit longer. But just to give you a little known fact between you and me, the reason that Lex Luthor managed to become so rich in the first place is because he was so savvy with his discount codes. Similar to the ones that you can use at the channel sponsor, Organic Price Books. They've got great packaging, fast shipping, and amazing customer services, and if you use code WOOFWOOF, you'll get $2 off your order. And if you're ordering 3 or more books and you want them to be delivered together, make sure you use code WOOFWOOF, ship it together for 5% off your entire order. Don't worry, you can just copy and paste them from the description down below, and you can use these codes as many times as you like. However, because this was a shorter story, I felt like some of the foreshadowing was really on the nose, and it didn't get enough time to really marinate or become what it should have been. You could see pretty easily what was going to happen, who was going to betray who, and where everything was going, which is why I'm probably not really having a spoiler alert in this video. But the Bruce Wayne scenes were another real highlight of this book. And I found it funny as well, considering that this book came out in 2005, that his version of Bruce Wayne kind of looked a bit like Robert Pattinson's when he was wearing those glasses. So it was great because in a similar way to what I loved with All-Star Superman, you never really got the sense that this guy was actually Batman, but you know, between you and me, he is. This led into a fight between Batman and Superman, which was probably my favourite moment in the book, and it was one of the best that I've seen done in comics, and it completely obliterated the argument that with enough prep time, Batman could stop Superman. Because if he doesn't have that prep time, Superman could just run up on him at any point that he wanted to and just kill him. He could do it from miles away, and the only thing that could save Batman is Superman. I just love the fact as well that this was pretty much a silent fight between the two. There was no hokey dialogue, none of them were talking about why the others shouldn't be doing this or how they're going to stop them. It was a fight at its purest moment because of the fact that Superman just wanted to prove a point. What I found most interesting though was how I began to understand how Superman could be a fearsome figure. Just seeing him hover outside of Lex's window, the way he looms over him and doesn't even need to say anything, or the fact that he stalks Batman as if he's some kind of prey and he can do it from such a comfortable distance. It was a bit odd just how quickly it could change with perception, and when I finished the book I realised that there was more moments like that than there was when it was showing Superman doing anything heroic. Sure, yes, there was a few moments like that, but we were mostly looking at this from the perspective of Lex, and I really started to understand the feat that he was going up against. Kind of made me respect Luthor a bit more, the fact that he would choose to go against this pretty much god from a different planet. The side story with the toy maker was pretty much the second half of this book, and I did really enjoy that as well, and I think that this was really one of the strengths of the book, that in a few short issues it could balance a few entertaining subplots whilst all building to the same crescendo. None of it felt massively out of place, even the stuff with the guy that was doing side jobs for Luthor all managed to feel like it was part of the same book. And there wasn't really anything that I would cut out of this story, and like I said earlier, I'd actually make this longer if I could. I wanted to see a bit more of Hope being a superhero and build that relationship between her and Lex, because at the same time you know you can't trust Luthor and that she's just going to be some part of a greater plan. There was a lot to love in this book, and I think it did quite a bit in just a few short issues. Lex's monologue at the end, and if you don't want to hear anything about this, I'd recommend skipping to the final verdict timestamp down below, but I loved how it told me everything that I needed to know about Lex. And at the same time, it never felt gimmicky or ham-fisted, or that this wasn't something that somebody like Lex would speak about. He does have an ego problem, which is something that, you know, I can kind of relate to, but everything that he said made sense considering what we'd seen him do, what we already knew about the character, what he'd sacrificed and what he was hoping to achieve. And even if I couldn't agree with his actions, this part did make me understand why it was important to Lex. Having him openly admit that he can't beat meet Superman and even question if the actions that he'd taken in this book were futile in the grand scheme of things. Just fantastic, and this was a book that really ended on a high note. There are a few great speeches from Lex throughout this book, but I definitely think that the one at the end was the best and the one that I enjoyed the most. And I think whoever plays Lex next in a movie, and I hope to God it's not going to be Jesse Eisenberg again, I'd actually prefer me to be in that role over him, because let's be honest, I don't think I could do a worse job. But this book and this scene in particular should be mandatory. This should be the scene that they use when they're doing auditions. Really ended the book on a massive strong note for me, and it left me questioning if Lex was the type of person that's on the right mission but just going in the wrong direction. Like, if Superman was never in the picture, what could he have done for himself? What could have been his legacy or legacy? Okay, sorry, I'll stop. But what could he have crafted for himself if he didn't go on this mission that he knows he couldn't accomplish against Superman? Or is that just the type of person that Lex is? If everything else has come so easily to him, does he need to have some kind of crusade that he can't win? I don't know, and I like books that leave me thinking, which isn't too difficult because of the fact that I am a pretty dumb reader. Like in the last book that I reviewed, I struggled with the panels, so I don't really know what that says about me. But at the same time, I feel like I know a lot more about Lex while still not knowing everything about him, and I think that's the best thing that this book could have done. This is me final verdict. And the tide has shifted for superhero comics. Gone are the days of having an arch nemesis who only exists to strengthen the hero, but instead they need to cast a reflection on who they are at the core. But Lex Luthor Man of Steel isn't that kind of book. Although not the first of its kind, with titles like The Killing Joke and Kraven's Last Hunt having risen to prominence long before Azzarello and Bermejo ever got to work on Lex Luthor. But what this book did was force us to look at his life and motivations, and didn't intend to tell us a story of a villain, but instead just a guy who doesn't trust Superman and will go to any lengths to prove it. I had a great time with this book, and it made me want to go back to other Superman stories that are very Lex heavy and see if I can view them in a different perspective. Do I think this is one of the greatest comics of all time? No, and even as I'm reviewing it, I'm wondering if I brought more into the review part of this than when I was actually reading it. I'm feeling like I'm finally getting my money's worth out of my English degree that has pretty much done nothing for me up to this point. But with minimal appearances from the Man of Steel, Luthor manages to tell an interesting and engaging story about one of DC Comics' best villains that's often quite overlooked. Bermejo's art, even though there are a handful of pages that don't really seem up to the standard that I'm used to from him, still help in creating a gritty and realistic look that was essential in helping to redefine Lex's image. I had a great time with this book, and sometimes that's all I really need. So it might seem a bit high considering the score that other books have gotten on this channel, but I'm going to give Luthor a very respectable score of 80%. Woof woof! So that's a review, and if you checked out this book, let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Do me a massive favour, share this video where you can, it really helps support the channel. But I guess that's a video for now, and until next time, just make sure that you stay safe. And stay mad, all you dogs. Woof woof! See you at the next video.